So AX320 is AXIOM's Cloud and Internet Investigations class. It is where we expose to you how this tool can be leveraged to gain that cloud data to bring together with all the other evidence you have in the case or in a standalone environment so that you can maximize that or leverage that information in your investigations. It's designed for any investigator, anybody who's doing investigations from law enforcement to the corporate investigators. Anyone who's looking at digital evidence needs to be looking at the cloud. This is how these systems work these days. Whether you're using an endpoint that's a laptop or you're using a cell phone or a tablet, so much of our information these days is synced between these devices and the cloud, or it's simply stored in the cloud, that not, if you have the legal authority to access that and can access it, you need to be accessing it. Otherwise, you're leaving evidence on the table and walking out the door, and you don't want to do that. So for some students, I'm finding a lot of students are coming to our class who are just not even aware of what the cloud can do for their investigations, or what a tool like AXIOM can do to get that information for them. So sometimes it's just simply opening their eyes to this whole other world that they might not be thinking of. They think of traditional evidence, coming from a hard drive or a cell phone extraction, or they get something from a thumb drive, but they're not fully thinking in 4D, I like to call it. They're not thinking where all that evidence can be. If they're holding that phone in their hand, we'll use phone as an example, I know there's evidence on that phone. And I know that my cell phone provider might have some evidence useful to my investigation. And that phone might be synced to a computer, which could have a lot of information on it. But these days, whether all that's occurring or some of that's occurring, there is something that's synced to the cloud. And the cloud essentially is, and the joke we like to make is, it's just someone else's computer that is synced somewhere on some other device. And again, if you have the right or the legal authority, whether that's criminal or civil investigations, you don't want to walk away and not leave evidence, especially being able to take that evidence and pulling into an all for one tool, if you will, and putting it in with AXIOM and looking at it in conjunction with the other traditional evidence that you've pulled in, the stuff from the computer, the stuff from the phone, stuff from the thumb drive, and getting the context of the entire investigation. Yeah, we used it all the time. So specifically, my background was doing a lot of child exploitation investigations, crimes against children, and sometimes we would have, more times than you could imagine, we would have cooperative suspects. And those suspects would agree to turn over their accounts and allow us to log into their cloud accounts. And we could use a tool like this to directly download that information, to capture that evidence before it's lost, and to begin to look at that evidence. Probably the most dramatic example, though, is I worked a case where we had a murder, and the suspect and the victim were completely unrelated. They had never crossed paths in the universe at any time. And by getting a search warrant return from Google in this case, and being able to use a tool like AXIOM, we were able to use her location information, it was a her in this case, and put the two together, which opened the door to what actually happened. It was that third-party independent witness we needed to come forward, in this case, in the form of cloud information, to say they did intersect, and that led to the solving of that homicide. Opening their eyes to evidence that they're leaving on the table. They are missing evidence, and they're walking out of the room. And I'm using that figuratively as the being on a physical search warrant scene, but they're walking out of the room and leaving evidence behind, and you can't leave any evidence behind in our investigations. Certainly I recommend any of the courses, whether it's computer or mobile related, so you can look at how to bring all your evidence together. But the biggest thing I recommend when my students walk out is I have them go extract their own data. Go and do a Google takeout. Go and download their Facebook information. whatever the social media platform, or whether it's Apple or Microsoft or Google, whatever platform they have, I really encourage them to download their own data because they know what their data is, or they think they know what their data is. And then I have them use AXIOM Cloud to look at their own data, and they're always blown away by what they find.